I always believed marriage was sacred, a bond meant to last forever. Growing up, I saw it firsthand in my parents. They weren't perfect, but their love and commitment were undeniable. It was the kind of relationship I dreamed of having someday. That dream seemed to come true when I met Emma right after college. She was vibrant, ambitious, and we clicked instantly. Within a year, we were married. Life felt like it was falling into place. We bought a cozy house in Austin, Texas, started our careers, and had two beautiful daughters, Lily and Sophie. For years, I thought we were the perfect family. Sure, we had the usual stresses of work and raising kids, but Emma and I always found time for date nights and little traditions like family movie nights every Friday. Looking back now, maybe I ignored the signs, or maybe I didn't want to see them. It started with little things. Emma became distant, spending more time on her phone or working late. She laughed less, avoided eye contact more. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Life gets busy, right? I told myself it wasn't anything serious. But deep down, a part of me felt uneasy. I never imagined that the woman I trusted with my whole heart was keeping a secret that would shatter everything we'd built. The day I found out about Emma's affair started like any other. I was in the kitchen, packing lunches for Lily and Sophie, while Emma sat on the couch, glued to her phone. She'd been doing that a lot lately, smiling at her screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I remember asking her, jokingly, "What's got you so distracted all the time?" She barely looked up, muttering something about a work project. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. Something about the way she brushed me off felt off. A few days later, I was searching for Sophie's missing tablet. Emma had mentioned it might be in her bag, so I went to check. Her phone was in there, buzzing with a notification. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but this time, curiosity got the better of me. The message on the screen froze me in place. It was from someone named Scott, and it read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped. My hand started shaking as I unlocked her phone. She'd never bothered to change the passcode. There was weeks, maybe months of text between her and Scott. Flirty messages, plans to meet up, inside jokes I didn't understand. The kind of intimacy that should have been reserved for us. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My head was spinning, my chest tightening. I kept reading, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the truth was all there in black and white. Emma wasn't just distracted. She was in love with someone else. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at her phone, but eventually I heard her footsteps behind me. I turned around, and she saw it immediately. Her phone in my hand, the look on my face. Her smile faded, replaced by something between guilt and fear. She didn't need to ask what I'd found. She already knew. "Jason," she started, her voice trembling. "I can explain," but I didn't want to hear explanations. Not yet. Not when my entire world had just crumbled around me. I stared at Emma, holding her phone like it was evidence in a trial. My voice came out low, trembling with anger and disbelief. "Explain what, Emma? That you've been sneaking around with Scott? That you've been lying to me? To us?" She opened her mouth, but hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. That only made me angrier. "Don't you dare try to sugarcoat this," I snapped. "How long has this been going on?" Her shoulders slumped, and she looked at the floor. "A few months," she admitted quietly. "A few months?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Do you even realize what you've done? To me? To the girls?" My heart was pounding in my chest, my hands shaking as I set her phone down on the counter. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jason. I swear." "That's what you're going with," I said bitterly. "You didn't mean for this to happen? Emma, you made a choice. Over and over again, you chose to lie to me. You chose him." She started crying then, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not yet. "Why, Emma? Just tell me why," I demanded. "What was I missing? What did he give you that I couldn't?" She wiped her face and finally looked at me, her eyes red. "I don't know," she said, her voice cracking. "It's not about you, Jason. I love you, but Scott makes me feel alive. He gives me something I can't explain, something I didn't even realize I was missing." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt the air leave my lungs, like she'd just confirmed every insecurity I'd ever had. You love me, but you still did this? I said, my voice trembling. Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? For what? For some fling. It's not a fling, she said quietly, and I saw something in her eyes that terrified me. She believed it. I couldn't take it anymore. I need space, I muttered, turning away. I can't even look at you right now. Jason, please, she started, but I raised a hand to stop her. Don't, I said. Just don't. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and into the cold night air. My mind was racing, my chest heavy. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I felt angry, humiliated, heartbroken, all at once. I sat on the porch, staring out at the empty street, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to do next. That night was the longest of my life. I sat on the porch for hours, replaying everything over and over in my head. How could I have missed it? Were there signs I ignored? Or worse, was I not enough? The anger came in waves, surging and retreating, replaced by a gnawing sadness that felt bottomless. I thought about Lily and Sophie, asleep in their rooms, completely unaware of how their world was about to change. That thought broke me. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing the family we'd built together. When I finally came back inside, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. She looked up when I walked in, her face streaked with tears. Jason, we need to talk, she said softly. I shook my head. Not tonight, I replied, my voice flat. I can't do this right now. I went straight to the guest room and shut the door, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. I heard her voice saying Scott's name. My mind spun in circles, questions, doubts, what-ifs. How long had she been lying to me? Did she ever regret it? Did she think of me at all when she was with him? By the time the sun came up, I felt hollow. I got the girls ready for school like it was any other morning, forcing a smile when they asked why Mommy wasn't coming to breakfast. Emma stayed in our room, avoiding me, and I was grateful for the space. The days that followed were a blur of emotions I couldn't fully process. Anger at her betrayal, pain at the loss of the life I thought we had, shame, though I couldn't explain why. Was it because I hadn't noticed? Because I wasn't enough to keep her happy? I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. I needed an outlet, something to burn off the restless energy that came with the heartbreak. I'd wake up early, throw on my sneakers, and run until my legs ached and my lungs burned. It didn't fix anything, but for a little while, it numbed the pain. Still, the questions kept haunting me. What was I supposed to do now? Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? And what about the girls? They deserved stability, love, a home, not the mess we were living in. But no matter how much I ran, no matter how much I thought it over, I kept coming back to one truth. The woman I'd trusted with my whole heart had broken it. And there was no going back to the way things were. After a few days of avoidance and sleepless nights, I realized something. I couldn't live in limbo forever. I had to make a decision. Either we worked on our marriage, or we ended it. But pretending things were fine wasn't an option anymore. I confronted Emma again one evening after the girls had gone to bed. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I could feel my frustration boiling up again just at the sight of it. We need to talk, I said firmly, standing in front of her. She put her phone down slowly, like she knew this wasn't going to be easy. Okay, she said, her voice cautious. I can't keep doing this, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. I can't pretend everything's fine when it's not. You need to decide, are you going to end things with Scott and commit to this family, or are you walking away? Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. Jason, I want to stay, she said finally. I don't want to break up our family. I love you, I do, but I don't know if I can give up what I have with him. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. You can't have both, Emma, I said, my voice rising. You can't claim to love me while keeping a relationship with another man. That's not how this works. I don't know what you want me to say, she snapped, her tears spilling over. I feel trapped, Jason. I've been under so much pressure, work, the kids, everything. Scott was my escape. He made me feel like myself again. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. So your escape? was worth risking everything we've built? Our family? Our marriage? She didn't respond. Her silence spoke volumes. That night, I started moving her things to the basement. It was a symbolic move as much as a practical one. I couldn't bear to sleep in the same room as her anymore. When she saw me carrying her clothes downstairs, she started yelling, calling me petty and dramatic. But I didn't care. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for me. The next morning, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I didn't know if I was ready to end the marriage yet, but I needed to understand my options. What would divorce mean for the girls? For me? For our finances? When I told Emma I'd spoken to a lawyer, her reaction surprised me. She didn't seem angry or even sad. She just looked scared. "You're really doing this?" she asked quietly. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I need to know what my life might look like if you can't let him go." For the first time since this all started, I felt like I was taking control of the situation. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave me a sense of clarity. If Emma couldn't choose me, then I'd have to choose myself. After meeting with the lawyer, I began to grasp just how complicated this process could be. Divorce wasn't just about splitting up, it was about uprooting every aspect of the life we'd built together. Custody, finances, the house, it all felt overwhelming. "Jason," the lawyer said, leaning forward in his chair, "I'm going to be honest with you. Texas typically favors the mother in custody cases, especially if she's been the primary caregiver. If you want shared or full custody of Lily and Sophie, you'll need to prove it's in their best interest." I felt the weight of those words settle on my shoulders. The thought of not being there for my daughters every day was unbearable. I'd done bedtime stories, school drop-offs, scraped knees, and ballet recitals. I wasn't just some background figure in their lives. I was their dad. "Is her affair relevant?" I asked. "It can be," he said, "especially if you can show that her actions have negatively impacted the children or her ability to parent. But Texas courts don't always see infidelity as grounds for unfit parenting. You'll need to build a strong case." I left the office feeling a mix of determination and dread. I knew I had a fight ahead of me, and it wasn't just about custody. Financially, divorce would stretch me thin. Emma had only been working part-time, which meant I'd likely be on the hook for spousal support. To make matters worse, I'd essentially be funding her lifestyle while she continued seeing Scott. That realization made my blood boil. How was it fair that I was being punished for her betrayal? But the lawyer was clear. Texas law wasn't about fairness. It was about practicality. Over the next few weeks, I started gathering everything I'd need to protect myself. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, anything that could paint a clear picture of what had been going on. I even started journaling, documenting my interactions with Emma and any incidents that might matter in court. Meanwhile, Emma was trying to act like things were normal, as if we could coexist in this strange, broken limbo. She still cooked dinner for the girls, helped them with homework, and even asked me about my day a couple of times. It was maddening. How could she expect me to play along after what she'd done? One night, after the girls had gone to bed, she approached me in the living room. "Jason, do we really have to do this? Can't we just figure something out?" I looked at her, barely recognizing the woman I'd married. "Emma, I've given you every chance to figure things out," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But you don't get to have it both ways. You need to make a choice." She hesitated, then said quietly, "I just don't want to lose my family." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But how could I trust someone who had already betrayed me? And how could I stay in a marriage where I always felt like a second choice? That was the moment I realized the road ahead wouldn't just be difficult. It would be messy, painful, and full of sacrifices. But for the sake of my own self-respect and for my daughters, I had to keep moving forward. Staying in this limbo wasn't an option anymore. Emma's perspective, or at least the way she framed it, was maddening to hear. She saw herself as a victim of circumstances, not as the person who had detonated our marriage. "It's not like I planned for this to happen," she said one evening after the girls were asleep. She sat across from me at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "Scott was just there. He made me feel seen, Jason. Like I wasn't just a mom or a wife, but a person." I folded my arms, doing my best to stay calm. "You act like I don't see you, Emma. Like I haven't been here every step of the way. You think I don't appreciate you." She sighed, her face softening in a way that almost felt patronizing. It's not about you, Jason. It never was. You're a good husband, a great dad. But sometimes, that's just not enough. Her words stung. Not enough. I replayed that phrase in my head as she continued, explaining how the pressure of parenting and keeping up appearances had left her feeling suffocated. Scott, she claimed, was an outlet, a way to let off steam, to reconnect with parts of herself she thought she'd lost. And you think that justifies an affair? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay composed. No, it doesn't justify it, she said quickly. But it helped me. It made me feel like I could be a better wife, a better mother. You still here? Dom fundo. You think cheating on me made you a better wife? She flinched but didn't back down. You don't understand what it's like, Jason. The constant pressure, the expectations. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just needed something for me. It was like talking to a stranger. The Emma I thought I knew would have been horrified by this conversation, by her own choices. But here she was sitting across from me, justifying the betrayal as though it were some kind of self-care strategy. What about the girls? I asked. How do you think this affects them? If you're so stressed out, how does sneaking around with Scott help you be a better mom to Lily and Sophie? She frowned, guilt flickering across her face. I've kept it separate from them, she said. They don't know anything about this. But they will, Emma, I said, my voice breaking slightly. You don't think they'll pick up on the tension? On the fact that their parents don't even sleep in the same room anymore? You think they won't notice when their whole world starts falling apart? She didn't answer. For the first time, she looked genuinely uncertain, like she was realizing the depth of what she'd done. I don't want to lose them, she whispered. I shook my head, leaning back in my chair. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you started seeing Scott. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. Emma had made her choices, and now we were all paying the price. The uneasy truce between us didn't last long. As the days stretched into weeks, the tension in the house became unbearable. Every interaction felt like walking on eggshells, and even the simplest conversations turned into arguments. One evening, after dinner, Emma asked me why I had moved some of our joint savings into a separate account. You're hiding money from me now? She said, her tone accusatory. I'm protecting myself. I replied evenly, though my pulse quickened. You've made it clear where your priorities are, Emma. I need to make sure I can take care of myself and the girls when this falls apart. Her face flushed with anger. This isn't just your money, Jason. We built this life together. And I'm the one trying to keep it from crumbling, I snapped. You don't get to cheat on me and then act outraged when I take precautions. The fight escalated quickly. She accused me of being cold and vindictive, while I threw her betrayal back in her face. The yelling got so loud that Lily came downstairs, her big brown eyes filled with worry. Mom? Dad? Are you okay? She asked softly, clutching her stuffed bunny. Emma and I froze, our anger evaporating in an instant. It's okay, sweetie, I said, kneeling down to her level. Mommy and Daddy are just talking a little loudly. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine, and we all knew it. After that night, I resolved to make things clearer. I formally separated our finances, dividing the bills and expenses so there would be no confusion about who was responsible for what. It wasn't about punishing Emma. It was about setting boundaries. But Emma didn't see it that way. She accused me of trying to push her out of the house, of making her feel like a guest in her own life. You're acting like this is all my fault, she said during one particularly heated argument. It is your fault, Emma, I shot back. You're the one who broke our marriage. You don't get to play the victim here. She didn't respond, but the look in her eyes was a mixture of guilt and defiance. She still refused to end things with Scott, which only made the situation worse. Every time I saw her texting or stepping outside to take a call, my blood boiled. One night, I finally confronted her about it. Are you seriously still talking to him? I asked, my voice low but furious. I told you, Jason, she said, crossing her arms. I can't just turn my feelings off. This isn't something I can fix overnight. Then what's the point of you staying here? I asked, throwing up my hands. You claim you want to save this family, but your actions say the opposite. She didn't have an answer. and that silence spoke louder than anything else. By this point, I wasn't just angry, I was exhausted. The constant fights, the emotional whiplash, the uncertainty about the future, it was all taking a toll on me. I could feel myself growing more distant, not just from Emma, but from the life we'd once shared. It became clear that we were heading for a breaking point, and there was no stopping it. Emma was unwilling to let go of Scott, and I was unwilling to accept a marriage that felt more like a charade. Something had to give, and soon. The breaking point came not long after. I had filed the preliminary paperwork for divorce, and Emma had finally hired a lawyer of her own. What little civility we had left dissolved the moment lawyers entered the picture. Suddenly, it wasn't just about us. It was about strategy, leverage, and winning. Emma's lawyer wasted no time advising her to push for full custody of Lily and Sophie. When I found out, I was livid. Full custody? I demanded during one of our increasingly rare face-to-face conversations. You're seriously going to try to take the girls away from me? It's not like that, she said defensively. My lawyer said it's what's best for them. Stability, consistency. You work full-time, Jason. I've been the one taking care of them day in and day out. That doesn't mean you're the better parent. I shot back. I've been here every step of the way, Emma. Don't act like I'm some part-time dad just because I have a job. Her face flushed, but she didn't respond. I could tell she knew I was right, but it didn't matter. Her lawyer had likely painted a picture of her as the perfect, devoted mother, and me as the overworked father too busy to provide the emotional support the girls needed. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I met with my lawyer again and laid everything out on the table. Emma's affair, her refusal to end things with Scott, and the impact it had already had on our family. I need to prove that I'm just as capable of providing a stable, loving home, I said. My lawyer nodded. You'll need documentation, everything you can gather. Financial records, proof of her affair, even a journal of your day-to-day involvement with the girls. We can also argue that her relationship with Scott could negatively impact the kids if it's brought into their lives. It felt surreal, building a case against the woman I had once trusted with everything. But every time I thought about losing time with Lily and Sophie, about missing bedtime stories, soccer games, or weekend pancakes, I knew I didn't have a choice. Emma, meanwhile, seemed to grow more defensive as the legal battle unfolded. One night, after the girls were asleep, she confronted me in the kitchen. "Why are you trying to ruin me?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Ruin you?" I said, incredulous. "I'm trying to protect my daughters, Emma. You're the one who put us in this position." "You think this is easy for me?" she snapped. "I never wanted any of this, Jason. But you're forcing my hand. You're making me out to be the villain." I let out a bitter laugh. "You did that all on your own." The emotional toll of the legal battle was heavier than I expected. I found myself alternating between anger and heartbreak, between determination and doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Could I win this fight without destroying what little was left of our family? The only thing that kept me going was the thought of my daughters. I owed it to them to try, to fight for their stability and happiness. Even if it meant standing toe-to-toe with a woman I had once loved more than anything. And so, the battle continued. Every email from my lawyer, every court filing, every strained conversation with Emma felt like another brick in the wall between us. The life we had built together was officially crumbling, and there was no turning back. The day we walked into the courtroom to finalize the divorce was surreal. Sitting on opposite sides of the room, Emma and I barely looked at each other. It was hard to believe we had once stood in front of family and friends, promising forever. Now, we were here, watching a judge determine the terms of our split. The proceedings were tense, but relatively straightforward. My lawyer had done a remarkable job building a case that highlighted my role as an active, devoted father. Emma's affair also played a part, even though her lawyer tried to downplay its significance. The judge ultimately ruled in my favor, granting me primary custody of Lily and Sophie with shared visitation for Emma. When the decision was announced, I felt a wave of relief and sadness. I had fought for my daughters and won, but it was bittersweet. The family we once were was gone, replaced by a fractured version of what used to be. Emma didn't take the news well. As we left the courtroom, she pulled me aside, tears streaming down her face. "Jason, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't want it to come to this. I just wanted us to figure things out." I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "You had the chance to figure things out, Emma," I said quietly. "But you chose him over us. I can't keep pretending this is something it's not." She nodded, wiping her tears, but I could tell she hadn't fully accepted it. Over the next few weeks, as we settled into the post-divorce arrangement, Emma struggled. She tried to keep up appearances for the girls, but her sadness was evident. And then there was Scott. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, Scott had distanced himself from her as soon as the divorce became real. He wasn't interested in taking on the baggage of a broken marriage and 2 kids. Emma had gambled everything for a man who wasn't willing to stand by her when it mattered most. The girls adjusted surprisingly well, though there were tough moments. Lily asked me one night, "Why doesn't Mommy live here anymore?" It broke my heart to explain it in terms a child could understand without vilifying Emma. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetie," I told her. "But no matter what, Mommy and Daddy both love you very much." Sophie, being younger, didn't ask as many questions, but I could tell she felt the changes too. I made a point to fill our days with as much love and laughter as possible, creating new traditions to help them feel safe and secure. Pancake Saturdays became our thing, and I never missed a soccer game or school recital. Meanwhile, Emma tried to rebuild her life. She rented a small apartment across town and saw the girls during her visitation days. The sadness in her eyes whenever she dropped them off was palpable. For all her talk of needing to find herself, she now seemed more lost than ever. In the end, the divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of who we had been together. And while it was painful, it was also necessary. We couldn't keep living in the limbo of betrayal and mistrust. I needed to move forward for myself and for my daughters. What I didn't know then was that the next chapter of my life would be filled with unexpected happiness, something I hadn't thought possible in the thick of the heartbreak. After the dust settled, I threw myself into creating a new normal for myself and the girls. At first, it felt strange, coming home to a quieter house, handling every school project and bedtime routine solo. But gradually, I found a rhythm. I moved into a smaller but cozier house that was closer to the girls' school. It wasn't as grand as the home Emma and I had shared, but it was ours. I turned the extra bedroom into a playroom for the girls and let them decorate it with their favorite colors and posters. They loved it, and seeing their excitement made it easier to let go of what we'd lost. For the first time in years, I started focusing on myself. I kept up with my running, eventually signing up for a half marathon. Training gave me a sense of purpose, something to pour my energy into outside of work and parenting. It was during one of those early morning runs that I met Diane. She was standing at a water station, handing out cups to runners with a bright smile and a contagious laugh. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, I was looking forward to seeing her every Saturday. She wasn't just kind and supportive. She was genuine in a way I hadn't realized I missed. When I finally worked up the courage to ask her out, I was nervous. My divorce was still fresh, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to open my heart again. But Diane was patient. She understood my hesitations and never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. Over time, Diane became a constant presence in my life and in the girls' lives. She didn't try to replace Emma, but she cared deeply for Lily and Sophie, always finding ways to make them smile. Watching the 3 of them bond was one of the most healing experiences I'd had since the divorce. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Diane turned to me and said, "You know, Jason, you're stronger than you realize. Not everyone could have handled what you went through and come out the other side like this." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I felt like I was just surviving, putting one foot in front of the other. But maybe she was right. Maybe I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. The girls were thriving. I was in a healthy, loving relationship, and the wounds from my past were slowly healing. I had built something new out of the ashes of what had been, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. But as much as I was moving forward, Emma wasn't. While my life was finding stability, Emma's seemed to spiral further out of control. After the divorce was finalized, Her relationship with Scott dissolved almost immediately. I heard through mutual friends that he had ghosted her. Not even a proper goodbye, just silence. It was as though the moment she became a divorced woman with responsibilities, she was no longer the escape he wanted. Emma didn't take it well. Her once confident demeanor was replaced with something hollow. She began missing her scheduled visits with the girls, calling last minute to say she couldn't make it. At first, I was furious. How could she let them down like that? But then I realized it wasn't malice. It was something deeper. She was lost, drowning in the aftermath of her choices. Lily started asking questions. Why doesn't mommy come to my games anymore? Does she still love us? It broke my heart to see the confusion and hurt in her eyes. I always answered as carefully as I could, never wanting to vilify Emma. Mommy's just going through a hard time right now, I'd say. She loves you very much, even if she doesn't always show it the way you want. Still, I knew the excuses wouldn't hold forever. The girls were smart. They could feel the distance growing between them and their mother, and no amount of soft explanations could fix that. I tried reaching out to Emma, offering to meet up and talk about how to co-parent more effectively, but she rarely responded. When she did, her messages were brief and defensive. She was clearly ashamed, though she'd never admit it outright. One evening, after one of her missed visits, she called me. Her voice was shaky, and I could tell she'd been crying. "Jason, I'm sorry," she said. "I keep screwing up. I don't know how to fix it." I sighed, torn between frustration and pity. "Emma, the girls need you," I said. "I know things are hard for you right now, but they don't understand that. All they know is that their mom keeps disappearing." "I don't know how to face them," she admitted. "Every time I see them, I'm reminded of what I've lost." I wanted to yell, to remind her that she had made those choices. But instead, I softened my tone. "Emma, they don't care about what you've lost. They just want their mom. Show up for them. That's all they need." For a while, it seemed like she tried. She showed up for Lily's school recital and took Sophie out for ice cream. But her efforts were inconsistent, and the damage was already done. The girls had grown wary of trusting her, and Emma seemed to sense it. Eventually, her calls and visits grew less frequent. She stopped showing up altogether for weeks at a time. I knew she was struggling, but I couldn't make her be the parent she needed to be. Watching her fall apart was a strange mix of sadness and vindication. She had once claimed she wanted to have it all, but her choices had left her with nothing. No family, no relationship, no sense of purpose. I wish things could have been different for her, if only for the girls' sake. But by then, I'd realized that Emma's happiness, or lack thereof, was no longer my responsibility. My focus had to stay on the girls and the life we were building together. I had moved forward, and whether Emma did the same was up to her. As time went on, Emma faded further into the background of our lives. The girls stopped asking about her as much, and when she did call or visit, it felt more like a chore for everyone than a genuine connection. It was hard not to resent her for that, but at the same time, I knew holding on to that anger wouldn't help anyone. Not me, not Lily, not Sophie. I thought a lot about Emma's choices, about how someone who once seemed so committed to our family could walk away from it all. She used to talk about how she wanted more, but the truth was she didn't even know what that more was. She chased a fleeting feeling with Scott, thinking it would fill the emptiness she felt inside, but it only left her more lost. When I looked back, I could see how cracks had formed in our marriage long before her affair. Maybe I hadn't noticed, or maybe I didn't want to. Emma always carried an air of dissatisfaction, like she was chasing an ideal life that didn't exist. I used to blame myself, wondering if I hadn't been enough, but I realized later that her unhappiness had little to do with me. It was something inside her, something no amount of love or support could fix. She wanted to have it all: a perfect family, a stable life, and the thrill of something new. But in the end, her pursuit of that fantasy cost her everything. I think she believed Scott was the answer, but when the dust settled, she realized he wasn't. And by then, it was too late to undo the damage. I don't know if Emma ever truly understood the ripple effects of her choices. How her affair didn't just destroy our marriage, but also fractured her relationship with the girls. I don't think she ever intended to hurt them, but her actions had consequences she couldn't take back. One night, after the girls were asleep, I sat on the couch, thinking about the life we used to have. I realized that, in a strange way, I was grateful for what had happened. It forced me to confront hard truths about myself, about Emma, and about what I wanted for my future. It made me a better father, a stronger person, and eventually a better partner to Diane. I used to believe that marriage was unbreakable, that love could conquer anything. But I've learned that love, like anything else, needs to be nurtured and protected. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, people change and love fades. That's okay. It doesn't mean the love you had wasn't real. It just means it wasn't enough to last forever. Emma taught me that, even if unintentionally. And for that, I'm oddly thankful. Because her mistakes, and mine, gave me the clarity to build a life I could truly be proud of. A life where my daughters feel safe, loved, and cherished. A life where I'm no longer just surviving, but thriving. And I hope, wherever Emma is, she's found some peace too. Not for my sake, but for hers, and for Lily and Sophie's. Life settled into a steady rhythm, and for the first time in years, it felt like there was real stability in our home. The girls were thriving. Lily started middle school and joined the soccer team, while Sophie was becoming more confident and bubbly in her elementary school class. Watching them grow and adapt reminded me of why I had fought so hard for custody. They were my world, and seeing their smiles each day made all the struggle worth it. Diane became an integral part of our lives, but it wasn't something we rushed. I was careful about how and when she spent time with the girls. I wanted them to see her as someone they could trust and rely on, not as a replacement for their mom. Diane understood that, and she took her time, building her own relationships with Lily and Sophie. I'll never forget the day Lily told me, "Dad, Diane's really nice. She's fun, but she listens too. I like having her around." That simple statement meant everything to me. It confirmed that we were moving in the right direction, that our new family dynamic was working. Diane and I talked often about the future, but she never pressured me. She respected the fact that my primary focus was my daughters, and she always encouraged me to prioritize their needs. It was one of the many reasons I fell in love with her. About a year after the divorce, we started talking about moving in together. The idea made me nervous at first. I didn't want to disrupt the girls' sense of security. But Diane reassured me, saying, "Jason, this isn't just about us. It's about them too. We'll go at their pace, whatever feels right." When we told Lily and Sophie about the idea, they surprised me. Lily shrugged and said, "As long as I get to keep my room, I'm fine with it." Sophie, on the other hand, was excited. "Does that mean Diane will make us pancakes too?" she asked, grinning. And so, Diane moved in. It wasn't always easy blending our lives, but it was worth it. She brought a lightness and warmth to our home that had been missing for so long. Together, we created new traditions, family game nights, camping trips, and Sunday dinners where we'd all cook together. Looking back, I couldn't believe how far we'd come. The pain of the past didn't define me anymore. It was part of my story, sure, but it didn't control me. I'd built something better, a future filled with love, hope, and resilience. Every now and then, Emma would pop into my thoughts. I wondered if she'd found a way to heal, to rebuild her life the way I had. I didn't feel anger toward her anymore, just a sense of quiet acceptance. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. What mattered most was the life I'd created for Lily and Sophie. They were happy, they were loved, and they were safe. And for me, that was everything. One evening, long after the girls had gone to bed and the house was quiet, I sat on the back porch with Diane. The sky was a deep indigo, stars scattered across it like glitter. The warmth of her hand resting on mine was a quiet reminder of how far I had come. "This feels good," I said softly, breaking the silence. "Life feels good again." Diane smiled, her eyes shining in the dim light. "You deserve it, Jason. You've been through so much, but you never gave up. You kept going for the girls, for yourself." I nodded, staring out into the darkness. For a long time, I thought I'd never feel whole again. Emma's betrayal. It broke something in me I didn't think could be fixed. But looking back now, I realize it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. A painful one, sure, but a beginning all the same. I thought about all the lessons the past few years had taught me. The importance of setting boundaries. The strength it takes to let go of something you once thought would last forever. The power of resilience and self-respect. Emma's choices had forced me to reevaluate everything. My marriage, my role as a father, even my sense of self-worth. At first, I thought her affair had destroyed me, but in reality, it had only stripped away the illusions. What was left was the real me, raw and imperfect, but stronger than I'd ever been before. The girls had grown so much through all of this. They'd learned about love and forgiveness, about the complexities of relationships. Lily, now on the brink of her teenage years, was blossoming into a strong, confident young woman. Sophie still had her wide-eyed innocence, but she had a quiet strength that amazed me. I saw pieces of myself in both of them, and I couldn't have been prouder. "Do you ever think about Emma?" Diane asked gently, as though she'd plucked the thought from my mind. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not in the way I used to, though. I don't feel angry anymore. I just hope she's figured things out. For her sake and for the girls. They still love her, even if they don't show it the way they used to." Diane squeezed my hand. "You're a good man, Jason. You've done everything you could for them." Her words stayed with me as I sat there, reflecting on how much my life had changed. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined me. It was a chapter in my story, not the whole book. If there was one thing I had learned, it was that happiness doesn't come from holding on to the way things were supposed to be. It comes from embracing what is, from building something new out of the broken pieces. As I sat there with Diane, watching the stars, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not just for the good things in my life, but for the hardships too. Because without them, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the man I was now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.